Hello, welcome to my channel. On this channel I like to make videos that are suitable for those people starting off on their crochet journey and beyond. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, it doesn't cost anything, so just click that bell and then you won't miss out on anything. I also do little hellos from Catherine's Granny Squares where I touch base showing you projects I'm working on, and they're interspersed with tutorial videos. So let's look at this project I'm working on today. It is a scarf. Yes, you can see that, but it's a thermal stitch scarf, and I've introduced this row of fluorescent here. So why I did this was because the dog that we have is very eager to go out in all weathers, whatever time of day, and at the moment in winter it's getting dark very early on. So we bought her a new flashing collar, and I thought, well, we really need something so we can be seen as well, especially if we're walking along the road verges, etc. Didn't want to be wearing a builder's high-vis waistcoat or jacket, so I've come up with this idea. I've used a thermal stitch here to give this dense strip of fluorescent edging, if you like, and then because I wanted to make it a nice scarf as well, I've done a few different stitches. I've introduced treble stitches, I've done an alternating half treble, back loop and front loop, and then I've just repeated on the other side. I did 149 chains to start off on this scarf, and as I say, this here, this neon yellow is actually just a double knit, but because it is the thermal stitch, you get this very dense fabric. And then I've gone on to use a chunky yarn simply because I wanted to keep up with the same weight that this almost produces. And then I should have finished off with a double knit again, but confession time, I was watching the World Cup on the television and I just carried on. So I've given myself this really dense border. That's going to be great because I get very cold. So if I hadn't been engrossed, I would have gone back and made another section using double knit. Also, I would have liked to have done another yellow strip here, neon yellow, but I couldn't get it to look as neat going the other way. So anyone who's got any tips on how I could have done that, I would really appreciate it. So today we're just going to do a little swatch. I'm only going to do 11 chains, and we'll start off by using a great big 8mm hook. I know it's a massive hook, but that's the one I thought I would try for this scarf, and it actually has worked out very well with this size hook. So we've done our amount of chains. As I say, for the big scarf I did 149. This is just a little swatch. Into the second chain I'm going to work into the back loop, that's the loop furthest away from you, and I'm going to do a double crochet. So this first row of the thermal stitch is going to be a row of double crochet, and we're working into that back loop. Now with the thermal stitch you don't actually need a set number of chains, it works with any number, and so take your pick on that. Really depends how long you want your scarf to be. I went for 149 because I thought, well, then that odd number will give me the turning chain. That's why I did the odd number, but you can work with any number on the thermal stitch. So just go along your row working into the back loop, that's the loop furthest away from you, and do one row of double crochet, and that will set you up for your thermal stitch. This neon yarn, the one I'm using is a James Cygnet. I will put the link, well not the link, but I'll put the name in the description box below. You can also buy other brands. Cygnet do one, and you can get these on Amazon. I can't get this neon yellow on Amazon at the moment, but you can get other neon colours. Let me just grab one. Nice bright orange you can use, and as I said, the Cygnet one is on Amazon. When we've done our row of double crochet into the back loop, we'll do one chain and turn. We won't use that turning chain as a stitch. We'll go into the first proper stitch, and again we're going to go into that back loop, but just turn the work to the slant, because you need to just pick up these loops that you didn't use before. So just put your hook into that loop that you didn't use before, and this is how we make the thermal stitch. So it's easier if you just turn your work and then slant it, because you want to see your row of V's, but you also want to be able to see these loops that you didn't use before. So go into the back loop and then just slide your hook down to pick up that loop you didn't use, and make another row of double crochet. So slant the work, and you can see your row of V's. Go into the back loop and pick up the loop you didn't use before. What you're creating is a very dense, almost two-tier fabric here. It's a great little stitch, this thermal stitch. As I say, it's only a double knit yarn I'm using, and soon works up to make a nice warm fabric. The reason I picked the thermal stitch wasn't so much for the warmth. I wanted a dense strip of fluorescent. So I'm just finishing this row, picking up that loop I didn't use to finish off my stitch. Try and get in that last one if you can, just to neaten off that row. One more left here. Do a chain and turn. So that's your first row of the thermal stitch. You can see the V's here, but also you can see these little loops, and they are what you are going to work into on this next row and subsequent rows. So you did your chain and turn. Don't work into turn and chain. Go into the first proper stitch in the back loop, and then you need to just slant your work, because you need to pick up these little loops, and that's what we're going to do. I made 4 rows, so slant, get your V, and then pick up that loop. I made 4 rows of thermal stitches, but you can obviously make more if you want a wider band of fluorescent. So I'm going all the way along. So there's your V, there's your V's. We're going to go into the back loop. Normally you would go through both loops. Go into the back loop and then we're just going to slide our crochet hook down, and that loop will be waiting for you. Into the back loop, slide the hook down into the back loop, slide the hook down. Try and get that last one if you can into that back loop. There we go, and just slide down, just so we finish off that row neatly. And then that's the thermal stitch. And then we're going to do one chain and turn the work. Now when you've got the amount of rows that you want, we just need to neaten off this stitch. So we'll go into both loops now. We go into both loops like you would do regularly, and then we're still going to pick up that loop we didn't use before. So go into both loops at the top, slide the work, and pick up that loop like we've been doing by picking up the loop, but we're not going to go into the back loop. We're going to go into the two loops like we would do normally when we do a double crochet. And then just make your double crochet just to make this neater. I can feel the dense fabric that this is producing. Just doing this little swatch, I can, as I say, it's amazing, this stitch. I love it. I'm just going to stop for a minute. You can feel that. It's hard to see obviously, but you can feel it. So continue going along and just picking up both, as you would do normally, go through both loops and then pick up your random loop, which should be there waiting for you. Just ease it on to make sure you pick that up and then finish your stitch. Now we're at the end here. We've got a stitch and we've got the chains, so let's go into that stitch first. And finish off that row by like we've been doing. But on the last part, which is the chains, we're going to change colour. Now I would really love to demonstrate with the black, but obviously that's not going to show up, so I'm going to have to use red. So we'll need to change and bring that red in. So we just need to go on top of the chain there if we can and make a regular double crochet. So we'll just go on top of the chain and we'll just bring in the red, do half the stitch in the fluorescent and then bring in the red, which is the substitute, as I say, for the black. And then we're going to do now a row of trebles. So we're going to chain up 3 and we're going to turn the work, and we're just going to do a regular row of trebles. I'm going to go into that straight away, go into that stitch there because I don't want a gap, and I'm just going to go along with 1 row of trebles. When I thought about this pattern, I thought, well, I want it to look nice as well as visible, so I thought I'd introduce this row of trebles and then we're going to do a different stitch section next, and then we're going to finish by just repeating how we started really. So going along a regular row of trebles here, do 2 chains, yes, 2 chains, because now we're going to do an alternating stitch. We're going to do a half treble and we're going to work into the back loop and then we're going to work into the front loop. So we're going to alternate working into the back loop and then the front loop, and we're going to do half trebles. So miss your 2 chains and go into the back loop. Remember, that's the one furthest away. Your next stitch, work into the front loop, so the loop nearest you, then go into the back loop, and then go into the front loop, and we're going to do that all along, and we're going to make a section of this alternating stitch, the half treble going into the back loop and then the front loop, and it gives for a nice texture to your work. Talking through a cold today, so I hope I'm making some sense here generally, and this is how we're going to go along. And I did 6 rows of this alternating stitch for my scarf. Do a couple just now and then so do your 2 chains, excuse me, turn, and I just do exactly what we've just done. Go into the back loop first, miss the 2 chains, go into the back loop, and then work into the front loop and go all the way along. And this gives a nice texture to your work. And as I say, I'm having to substitute the black for this red chunky, but it shows up better. I do like a project that uses different stitches, stops repetitive strain, and it makes it more interesting. So that's what I've done all the way along here, and then as I said, I did 6 rows of this alternating stitch. Right, and then what I did was I repeated what I'd done at the beginning. So after my thermal stitch, I did a row of trebles. So I did the thermal stitch, a row of trebles, my alternating half treble, front loop, back loop, front loop stitch, and then I'm just going back to doing my row of trebles. So 3 chains, turn the work, miss the 3 chains but go into the first proper stitch and do a row of trebles. And then after that I simply repeated the thermal stitch. And did I say I really wanted to do it in the fluorescent again, but I couldn't get it to neaten off very well, so I did it in the black again, which does give a nice thick border. I think I did say that, didn't I, at the beginning? I think I did, yes. So I'm doing my row of trebles, that's not very good, that's better. Do my row of trebles, and then I went back onto the thermal stitch on the top of the chain for the last treble, and then do 1 chain, turn, and then you would start off on your thermal stitch again, miss the turning chain, go into the back loop and do your row of double crochet just to start off with, just into the back loop for your thermal stitch, starting it off. And then the thing about the thermal stitch is, because you're working into the back loop, the loop furthest away from you, you're leaving that front loop, which is the almost like the basis of the thermal stitch, because that is what you work into. You pick up that loop you didn't use, and that seems to be how the thermal stitch works. I've come to the chain here, so I want to really just go through the chain, and I can't do much else but a regular double crochet there. Okay, chain 1, turn, and then it'll be the thermal stitch again. So that'll be just a quick reminder, missing the turning chain, going into the back loop, and then picking up that loop that you didn't work before. On the previous round you left that, so into the back stitch, back loop, and then picking up that loop, into the back loop and picking up that loop. And then when you've done the amount of rows of the thermal stitch that you want to do for your scarf, then you do the finishing off, where you go into both loops of the double crochet and pick up the loop. You can see here how it gives this sort of 2-tier effect. So into the back loop and then picking up the loop that you didn't work, back loop, just slant it, you'll see that, and your hook should pick that up nicely. So that is how I made this scarf, and I'm happy with the way it's turned out. I won't be wearing it probably on its own, knowing me. I'll probably wear a scarf underneath my coat, and this will be on top. I do like to keep warm on these cold days. And there we are at the end again, and again you've got a chain here, so I'm just going to go through see if I can get through another back loop there first. And then I'm just going to do a regular double crochet there just to finish it off, and I'll do my 1 chain and turn, and I'll go off again. I did 4 rows again because I did 4 rows at the beginning, and then I did that nice clean finishing off where, as I said a minute ago, you go through both loops and you pick up again your random loop just to finish it off. And that's what I did for the scarf. Again, this is just a little swatch to show you, and I hope you maybe would have a go at this. And again, as I say, if you haven't already subscribed, just click that subscription bell. It doesn't cost anything to subscribe to the channel, and I hope I will see you again on another video. If you make this scarf, you'll be seen and you'll be warm, and I hope you have fun trying it out. Bye for now.